Ken Rosenfeld joining us this morning. And as you know, the California Supreme Court hearing arguments today on the constitutionality of the state's voter-approved ban on gay marriage. There are so many facets to this, and we have, of course, Ken joining us this morning to shed some light on this. Earlier, we saw protesters already standing outside of the courthouse in San Francisco. So what's going to happen inside of that courtroom today? Well,
what's going to happen in the courtroom today is the California Supreme Court is going to make a decision of whether Proposition 8 is an amendment or whether it's a revision of the Constitution.
Okay.
That is the only issue that they're deciding today.
All right. And then also this morning, what are the chances of that ruling being overturned? Explain, if it goes one way, what's going to happen? If it goes the other way, what's going to happen?
What happened with Proposition 8, the people that are the proponents of Proposition 8, the yes on 8, if you will, their argument is that this is a lawful amendment to the Constitution, that the people have voted in the proposition, it passed, it's done. The opponents of Proposition 8, the no on 8 group, what their argument is that when this Proposition 8 passed, it completely revised the California Constitution. And in order to revise the Constitution, it doesn't go to the people. It has to go to the legislature first. In other words, the legislature has to be convened, and they have to vote by 67% to have it go to the people then for a vote. What they're saying is that you skipped a big step, and since you revised the Constitution, you have to go ahead and invalidate Proposition 8 completely as if it never existed.
So basically then the next step would be, if they decide on the latter that you just mentioned, the courts today, then it will go to the legislature and then back to the voters again.
Not necessarily.
Okay.
What will happen is if they invalidate it, if they state that it's a revision, the California Supreme Court, you have to get 67% of the legislature, one way or the other, to say that it was yes or no. And I don't think that'll ever happen. Is 67% of the legislature in California to vote yes or no when it's so closely divided as 52, 48, 50, 50, depending on what poll. I don't think you ever get to 67% in order for it to go back to the people. And if that were to happen, then the California Supreme Court's decision to legalize gay marriage would stand.
So you're saying basically this could be a big disappointment today to the no on 8 folks?
Yes,
okay.
I think it will be. I think that the final decision to say that this was a revision of the Constitution, in my opinion, is a far overreach of what happened. Right, wrong, or indifferent, no matter where you stand on the issue, it went to the people. It's an amendment. It's not a revision. So I think that the no on 8 crowd will be disappointed, but their fight will continue. They're not going to stop here.
And so let's talk about that fight. We talked about tens of thousands of people that were granted marriage licenses, many of them over the summer, and then this November issue was on the ballot. What happens to those unions?
Well, that's yet to be decided. In my opinion, those unions will stand and they will be legal marriages. When these people were married, we're talking about human beings. We're not talking about stock transfers. When they were married, they were lawfully married. For the government to come back now and say that marriage is invalid, I think is wrong, and I think it's a far overreach. It doesn't matter what position you stand on Proposition 8. The law is the law, and we all must follow it. And at the time they were married, it was lawful. Those marriages should not be disturbed.
So basically, will that issue have to go back to court then? Because is that a separate issue?
No matter how this winds up, it's going to go back to court, because the yes on 8 and the no on 8 are very powerful groups on both sides. They have a lot of money, and they have a base, they have an organization. Nobody's going to tolerate losing at this point, so whoever does not prevail is going to take the fight up one step. If the marriages are considered to be invalid, I assure you that the no on 8 groups will petition the court strongly and state our marriages were legal and valid at the time, that you cannot turn the clock back now and invalidate our relationships. And again, we're talking about human beings and relationships.
Absolutely.
We're not talking about stock or transferring. These are real people. These are real emotions. To go back and say that your relationship is not recognized or is not valid when it was legally done is wrong for the government to do.
And I think Paul has a question for you as well.
Yeah, Ken, it's just a real quick one here. If the no on 8 side loses in the California Supreme Court, is this something they can appeal to the federal Supreme Court?
It is. They can appeal it to the federal Supreme Court. The federal Supreme Court can make a decision of whether they want to hear it or not. They don't have to hear it. And likely, given how conservative the U.S. Supreme Court is right now, I doubt very much that they would hear it, Paul. I think that the U.S. Supreme Court will stay away from this issue. California is not the only state involved in the gay marriage debate. Almost every state is. And states like Connecticut and Massachusetts, where it's recognized and legally valid, the decision eventually will have to go to the Supreme Court, but I don't think it'll come now, and I don't think it'll come from California, because the way that it works is that if you're married legally in Massachusetts, you're supposed to be able to move to any state and have your marriage recognized.
Okay.
And that's not happening now.
Okay, thank you, Ken. We always